Yes, not from Ohio, from North Miami.
Very different weather. Um,
Yes,
All right,
very
let's jump
different.
straight into it, Mike, because you and I were having a little
Yes,
pre-conversation about the show, which is which direction are we going to go today? And you said, "Look, let's go. Let's. I want to talk a little bit about September 11th, 9/11, or 9/11." And I was like, "No, I don't want to go there. I'm not interested in having this conversation." And then I said, "You know what? Maybe what we should do is we should talk about the fact that organizations are still having major crisis issues when it comes down to culture and getting people back into that sort of village and community, and participating as humans together." And you kind of beeline that together where you said, well, wait a minute, we had this event which changed the course of how we do things, and now we've had this other event that has changed the course. So let's go back there. So let's start with 9/11, right? Sensitive time, and condolences and thoughts to all the families out there that might have lost someone.
yes.
But how how did that change business?
Well, being in New York. By the way, yeah. So I lost 12 friends, and then my best friend lost the majority of his company because he had just moved in 6 months to the 102nd floor. Um, that was, I think, the first real truth that it's very difficult to take things in the surface value for true. So this is gonna go deep. So the government
Right.
said, okay, it's okay to breathe the air down there, and it wasn't. It was they were wearing the same mask we were wearing during COVID, and mostly all
Hmm.
those first responders are either dead or in deep trouble. So it's like almost a. This is why we were talking about the second part of this conversation, which is COVID and workplace environment showing up. And I feel like the common thread is that is an event that's a major event that changed sort of the fabric of society. So from a physical workplace, it did have an effect because then, particularly in New York, these companies realized that you need to have a place in New Jersey and New York, like
Hmm.
centrally you can the thought of being wiped out as an organization became real. So there was massive movement in terms of strategy and where to locate people.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, everything else in terms of our lives became a royal pain in the ass. With if you say something, see something, and the airports, and it's so big shifts.
Hmm.
Then when you talk about COVID, that we experience a global event again, and now we're 2 years post 2 years, and
Hmm.
some things are getting back to normal, right? Because you said people are going to concerts,
Yeah, which
and
which will be my point after in a sec. I'll come back to that.
yeah, and people are gathering. Yet some things there's tremendous
One
pushback.
of those being, which is coming back into the office, right? And I
Yes,
mean, this is
absolutely.
what we were chatting a little bit about before, which is like this isn't about emergency and safety anymore, right? Because if it was, people wouldn't be going to the concerts, they wouldn't be going to the movies, they wouldn't be in the restaurants. The traffic, I mean, traffic this morning in Toronto, it was like, whoa! It's like this is what I remember Toronto to be. In fact, I have one of my team members call or message me this morning saying, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm like, I have not had one of these messages in 3 years, right? Um, so, you know, um, it's not an issue or it's not a concern of safety or health anymore, because if that was the case, people wouldn't be out. But it's like this thing that now trying to get people back into this model of being together around work is just like people are kicking against. It's funny because on one aspect we're vying to be out with people again, and on the other aspect we don't want anything to do with them. We want to be as isolated as we were before, and this is a major problem. Look, it's crossing my desk, man. I mean, there's a lot of conversation that I'm getting from it, which are, purpose, values, culture. Bringing people back. Like, how do we start to align? How do we start to build again? And it's like pulling teeth. And my question maybe is what are the potential dangers if we don't steer the ship back on track again? Right. And what
Yeah,
steering
that's a
back,
good
I don't
question.
know what that answer is.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Let's take a look at that one in a second. Um, the the first part of what you shared I think also needs a little bit of unpacking. So if we were comparing people showing up to work versus going to a concert from a safety perspective, then that would be a iron tight argument. Like if you're doing this, you should
Mm-hmm.
do that
Mm-hmm.
because you can't argue. There's no argument against that.
Correct.
However, the part of the fabric of the framework, which I think shifted, is that people faced death. Similar to what happened
Okay.
September 11th, a lot of death. And
Yeah.
if someone you know didn't directly die, someone um, died, and
Mm-hmm.
then when you started like this mathematical model of all the people that were affected during September 11th, it was like 3,700 people that died. But when you went like three relatives and three
Mm-hmm.
communities down, it was like millions of
Millions
people.
of people. Yeah.
And so with COVID, I think to me when this happened, I was with Caroline and I should have listened to her because she's like, let's get out of New York in like January, February. I'm like, it's
Mm-hmm.
not really coming. When it comes, we'll get out. And then we were trapped and then we got out. But when it happened, I was like, no, this is going to do the same thing September 11th. There's going to be things that we don't even know will radically shift. And
Mm-hmm.
the concept to think about is people that don't want to come back in for some of the reasons you just shared. I don't want to drive 45 minutes or an hour in traffic. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not getting paid for that. To then go show up at 9 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
to then work at 5 o'clock, to then drive another hour home, which I'm not getting paid for. And
Mm-hmm.
more important than just playing up dollars is that if you have a family and you and I both have young kids, if you're leaving at 7:30 in the morning, you're missing the mornings with them.
Yeah.
And if you're getting home at, you know, 6, 7, 7, anything after 7, you missed the opportunity with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting topic because I think there's depending on the the person, because some people are older and don't have kids, so they don't care about that. Some
Right.
people are younger. Even the younger generation, they don't have kids yet, but they're looking at it from a completely different perspective. Like their view on what's important
Mm-hmm.
maybe shifted. I don't know the data points on this, but maybe if you take 20s reshuffling of what's important, and maybe it's not. I don't want to work like a dog. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what I'm on this planet for. And then the 30s are like, wait a second, like this time's going fast, and I just witnessed I can do both, and I can spend more time with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what the 40s and 50s, but
Yeah,
it just
right,
feels
right, right. But you
feel
said
like
something there in the 20s, like I don't want to work. I don't want to work to death, right? I think it should be the opposite. And the younger you are, this is the time to
yes.
pound it, right? Like, I
That's
mean,
all
like
I
you're
did. It was work. That's all I did was work and drink.
right, 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 right. So I think it's um you're right. Look, I think we started the conversation with, how the fabric of things in society has drastically changed, and the first event being 9/11, and now we've gone through another event, the pandemic and COVID, and we're still seeing what happens, right? But I think where the point I was going to make is, if we're not careful, right? It's there's a very fine line between, work life balance and being with the family, and having the opportunity to work remotely and taking advantage of that because it is effective versus not. And I'll tell you, for me personally, like, I'm in Toronto this week and I'm in the office. Like, I came by the office yesterday. I'm here first thing in the morning. I like being in the office. I do. I find myself working more productively. I find myself in a different space, because when I'm in my studio at home, which I close the doors, it's all soundproofed, and it's like closes. I'm in these little white walls, and by 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, I wanna crawl out that studio. I can't. I need to leave the house, right? What I started to realize is, like, even for me, my own psyche, being able to come to a space which is different from where I sleep, different from where my kids are, is a thing that contributes to my efficiency, my better time management, my effectiveness, and my focus. Right. I think that's something that's also important to consider, which is this isn't about making you drive in 45-minute traffic. And we might argue, well, that's a little bit of your quiet time where you could listen to an audiobook, or you can sort of, reflect upon the day in snowy weather with red lights sitting in front of you. But the opportunity to put yourself in an environment that environment alone will have you perform at a higher level, I think is important. And that's what I think we need to keep
So I
pushing
agree.
people
Let's
through.
let's pick up the perspective of the company in a second, because I just want to stick where we're kind of trying to unpack the perspective of the worker, right?
Hmm.
So how much do you like? Is your family with you?
No,
All right. So how much how much you miss those little your wife and those nuggets? It's like
I I
it's
don't. I don't. I'll see him in a week from now, right? I mean, and listen, I think with the advantage of video and technology and stuff, our ability to connect with our family and kids is very much there, right? Did you just disappear somewhere? What's going on there?
I
Huh?
had
You got
I
your
was
you got your
yeah,
kid running in the room?
I was taking that annoying beep off. Yeah.
Right. So, right. But I agree with what your point was, which was earlier, which is if you left at 7, you missed the morning. By the time you got home, you're missing sort of the kids going to bed, and you miss a major part of their life, and it's important times, right? I believe we can do both. I think that's the conversation, which is it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be both. You get to do both now, right?
So
But let me.
let's look at it from okay, company wise.
Hmm.
So you've got I don't know, take a typical company you work with. They've got 300, 500,000 employees.
Hmm.
Normally, everyone Monday through Friday is coming to the office,
Hmm.
separated by what job function or
Job functions, meetings, roles, everything. Right?
so of that group of people. Okay, so let's just say okay, the model is everyone comes and we have efficiency X, right? It's
Hmm.
top efficiency.
Hmm. By
So
the way, I'm not saying if you come in the office, you're efficient. That's not like that people are not efficient working at home. Just to clarify.
yeah, no, I know, but we're talking about culture and kind of what
That's
the
what we're
different
talking about. You
the
know what we're
different
talking about? We're talking
perspectives.
about human connection, right?
Yeah.
You cannot touch someone through a screen, right? You just there is something that becomes a little bit of a block. So it's human connection, and it's the human connection that eventually results in some sort of a culture which we can define by attitudes and behaviors and go down that road, but we won't, right? But how do you deepen a relationship? How do you deepen a connection, right? Without the in between unscheduled time. Now, as a salesperson, right? I'm in
Mm-hmm.
sales, you're in sales, right? I
Yeah.
think Zoom has made our lives even easier as salespeople, right? Like we could meet with our clients and our opportunities instantly. And I find in a lot of cases, they'll take a meeting faster over Zoom than they would live, right? Because remember back in the day, you'd have to get together
Yes.
with someone. You
Yeah.
were you were disturbing them, right? It's like, do you want to go
Yeah.
for lunch? Can I come to your hour for an hour? That
Yeah.
was part of the pitch, which is convincing them that they should give up their time. So I think that barrier for salespeople has been removed through Zoom, right? But it's the other
But
stuff, and yeah.
but growing up in the stock market, where I was in bullpens of salespeople, trained in a room of 25 people with just a table on the wall that you had to stand and put your phone on two phone books, so it was perfect height, and
Hmm.
the humming of everyone on the calls selling. The congratulations, and we used to have a cowbell, ring the
Yeah, I
bell,
was gonna say you got to have a gong or a bell or
ring the
something.
bell. Yeah, and so that was maybe extreme to one side because that was the 80s and 90s. But even in you know today's world, it's it's missing for salespeople. I think if you have the luxury of being able to have 2, 4, 6, 10, 50 of them in a room,
Hmm.
like it's a team. It's more of a, to be even more effective. I think it's a team sport, sales. Now, on the other hand, we have technology that's made us more effective. But I do believe for that role, um, it makes all the difference in the world because you're always getting trained. You're hearing
Right.
someone else that's different or better say something that you never heard. It's being in that circular environment that gives you this constant. You're constantly on the field. If
Right.
that makes sense.
Right. Right.
Um, but
By
what
the way,
about other things?
I love your analogy of team sports. Like, I don't think that just applies to salespeople. I think that's what we're talking about here, which is together we're better, right? And what are the opportunities that we can come together and practice together and strategize together and play with each other, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, but are there roles that you can see if you? I guess if you're going to look at it from a company's perspective, so I'm a really bad example of this
Yeah. Well,
conversation.
you've got your entire company's remote, right?
Yeah, but I had an office in New York pre-COVID, and it was
Right.
turning out to be this great office. It was a floor of a brownstone, had a studio in the back that it took a while, like a year to get set up. 2 camera shoot with two 4K cameras, beautiful. And I finally
Mhm.
found a film and audio guy, and the objective was to have a packed front office and then be able to have clients come in and back and shoot their coursework and that kind of stuff. It was happening, and then COVID hit, and everything got slashed. So I actually had physical people in the office, which was really good because of that
Mhm.
energetic thing.
Mhm.
Um, then with COVID, that was it. You couldn't go in the office, and then I got rid of the office, and then we went and traveled and
Mhm.
came down to Costa Rica. So right now we've got 50, uh, 50. I think there's 56 people in my Gmail workplace emails. 56. I think probably like we're at like 50 people that are
Mhm.
dispersed. It's like the UN. I'm the actually only one um, from the United States. It's kind of crazy. I didn't think about it the other day until I started to realize like who else is from the United States, and the answer is nada.
Right.
So I have two in Costa Rica, a,
Mhm.
a handful in India, Pakistan, two important people in Nigeria, which is fairly new,
Mhm.
and I got a bunch in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Um, but what do? We have a monthly meeting on Zoom. We try to make
Mhm.
it talking about our culture and the mission and acknowledge people. We make new people that join us have to sing a
Yeah.
song spontaneously. But you're right. It's been,
No, you don't. You don't make people sing a song when they join you, do you?
oh yeah, now I'm gonna sing.
Those poor
Oh,
people.
it's
Because you know what? Can you imagine, right? I get it, and the outcome of the exercise is could be great, but man, if what a shock factor for someone's coming. Hey, welcome to the team. By the way, we've got this tradition that we. How many? By the way, here's a question: how many people
yeah.
sing Happy Birthday?
No one, because we usually have a birthday for the month, so we sing happy
No, but
birthday.
when someone has to sing a song, like what songs do you get? Like, do you
Oh,
get Happy Birthday?
you know what? I tell you, I give so much. It came out. This thing happened because the Philippine culture loves karaoke, and we actually
Yes.
had um, some of the people that were great karaoke's. So we would do Happy Birthday because we did have to do Happy Birthday. So like, oh, let Barbara do it. And I was like blown away. Then I was like, all right,
Wow.
we gotta do
You gotta
something
do
like
this.
this.
Okay, so it started spontaneously. Love it,
And
love it, love it,
there
love it,
was
love it.
no thought behind it other than the
Love it.
fact that I realized that we have some really talented people.
Right, right,
And then we have some that are like me that are just
right,
disaster.
right.
Well, you're trying to put things. I mean, I guess you're trying to put things in. So if
Mhm.
you if you normally my situation is different because I had the people and then in New York and I didn't and now I had the people
Sure.
overseas and they're overseas anyway. I never these people I never had on the opportunity of having together. But say let's take the example that you're working with. Okay, 2 years ago, 1,000 people, everyone's coming to the office, and today, 2 years later, now people are getting back to the office, but you still have this friction. What what can they do? Is it where you can actually each
Right.
month like have an event that's off
Correct.
site? Like
Correct.
what?
So let's go. So first, I'm not. poo-pooing on being remote. I think what you've just described is the advantage of what COVID has done, where it's now given us access to work with talent abroad that we would never normally either consider or traditionally tend to look at as a team member, right? Be like, oh, they're out of state or out of country. Nah, we're automatic. But what it did was it said, well, if I'm working with people in the same city on Zoom, then I can do that with someone in India and England and Italy and wherever. That was a huge advantage for me. The person that does our website is in Australia, right? I mean, the only challenge there is just scheduling the meetings with them every once in a while.
Time zone, yeah.
I have another person, who we were looking at doing did some copywriting with us in Italy. Awesome dude, right? And I would say this proudly, and I've got videos recording this of early days, like the greatest advantage that if we look at things from taking advantage or an optimistic side, man, look at the access we have to talent now that we never had before. Wow, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge advantage. But back to the question, what do we need to do? You know how malls, I used to do a lot of training back with malls in the day, believe it or not, right? Malls, right? Because the malls is a business, right? It's like, we need tenants, we need certain stable tenants, there's a revenue model attached to it, which I always thought was brilliant. And what you started to see in malls and these retail outlets was moving less away from what stores we have and more to the experience of the mall, right? Now you could think of some crazy examples, like in the US, there's, what is it? Is it America's Greatest Mall? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, big one.
Right? You could ski in it, you could snowboard in it, you can shop for days, you can go on a roller coaster. If you think about it, that mall is creating an experience to bring people together. And maybe if we took a little bit of that approach as businesses, not that you have to drive in the morning, but we want to make sure that this is a destination of experience and collaboration and, ideation and participation with each other, right? And I think the organizations or companies, and one of them, should emphasize and lean a little more towards that versus leaning to the fact that, we're still trying to support remote. And maybe people are going to get pissed and disagree with me.
No, and I have a great idea. I think there's a wonderful company out there, Witz Education, that should open up a division that will create an experience that is fun, and it allows people to communicate on a different level and also have personal development growth. Like, right. So now let's take the example of what we just described and say, let's flip it again. Everyone's in the office, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. That goes on for years. And so, the only real advantage is that they're working together, but everyone, everyone did a crappy job of creating any corporate culture. And then the corporate culture was, the new age tech companies, put bean chairs and food.
Correct. Granola bars and, different hydration stations.
Yeah. You feed me and let me actually drink a little bit and play some music. And I got, I have individual culture, but I don't have corporate culture.
Yeah.
So you could argue that whatever they were doing wasn't really effective, but now maybe there's this hybrid model that you can be the live event corporate culture experience. Right. That's going to combine fun, engagement, and leadership and exercises. But you could do it very locally, because I never was on one of these ones where you went into the woods with like 3 people or 5 people and you climb those telephone poles and
you do, falling trust exercises. Right.
I always wanted to do that, but none of the companies I ever worked with ever did that. I thought it would be fun.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. Like those are rare. That's like most companies aren't pulling that off. And if they do, it's not with a lot of people because you can't handle a lot of people. So there's a select group of people that go to that. But just think about the fact that if there was an easy way, like a SaaS platform, to sign up and say, you know what, I want to get on a monthly schedule and I'm going to buy the monthly package and I don't have to think about it.
Right.
And I just know that, okay, I'm going to, I need an investment because it's going to pay off, and I've got 250 or 500, 1,000. Probably the bigger companies like the 10,000 plus have their own departments and everything.
Right.
But that middle market, they're not going to pull it off themselves. So that would be cool.
It would be very cool. I was just thinking as you were talking, and I've literally had this conversation with like a dozen clients over the last couple of weeks. They are going through major layoffs and restructuring. So you now got a company that's laying off and restructuring, and you've got a remaining group of people there. Once again, it's even more important to bring that remaining group of people together. And again,
Yeah, because
not
fear.
not it doesn't have to be a 9 to 5, but it does have to be like, hey, we're a team. The team could be the culture of the organization in its entirety, or it could be my individual team within that organization. But I, as a leader, have a responsibility for bringing these people back together and practicing as a team, rehearsing as a team, et cetera, et cetera. I'll tell you a funny story. So in Costa Rica, right, for weeks now, we've been hearing these drums, these bangs, bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, what the fuck is this, right? And like, all day banging. And if you know anything about Costa Rica, you know you live in the mountains, so like the sound travels up like an amphitheater in these mountains. Anyway, it's Independence Day coming up, and there's these kids that have been rehearsing for weeks, man. And you know, if I tell you we are so far away from it, it reminded me of like when Veld first came to Toronto in Downsview Park, which is a big electronic festival. We hear this insane this insane music at my house, and this is early days of me and my wife, and I'm like, babe, I think there's like someone throwing a crazy house party here. There's some amazing music. Let's go. And we drove around the neighborhood, couldn't find this party. Anyway, eventually at like 1 o'clock in the morning, we call the cops, and we're like, all right, noise complaints. And they're like, you're about the 100th person to call. This is Veld Music Festival, which was like way, way, way down in another area, but the sound traveled. But, you know, I thought about that, and you got this team, these kids coming together to rehearse together and to practice together. And they're doing it. And maybe that's the attitude, which is this is the responsibilities. We come together for short periods of time, intense time together, where we bond, where we practice, where we rehearse, where we share, right? And then we go off and we do our thing. And then we come back together and we go
I
off.
even this is the way my brain works. I even have a name for this for you, but I'm not going to say it because we're live. I look like that when we turn the mic on. It's great, actually.
Mark, you're the ultimate marketer, by the way. If anyone's looking for digital marketing and guidance in LinkedIn and cloud selling, you are the man.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
The
I think we have to keep pushing against the norm. That's what we have to do.
So what happens if you're Goldman Sachs? You're the banks in New York, because they basically took a hard line and said, after Labor Day, stop fucking around, get back and
get your ass in the office
if you want a job.
Good. I think it's great. I think it's great, and I'll tell you why. Because when you leave it up to the individual to make the decision, all right, they won't. I've said this for a long time. You know why there's traffic lights on the street? Right? Telling you when to go, when to slow down, and when to stop. Because if you leave it up to the human being, they will fuck it up. And next thing you know, it will be chaos on the roads. People need guidance. They need structure, right? And it's been proven, which is over the last year, that conversation has been like, hey, look, we'd like you to come back in. We'd like you to come back in. Everyone's like, no, now they've crossed the hard line. And I think that's going to be great. I think it's going to be great. I think there should still be flex and opportunity. These are human beings. You should be able to trust the fact that someone's able to make an independent, mature decision on how to successfully accomplish their goals, their tasks, be efficient and effective within their role. But yeah, get your ass in the office, and then let's see what we can do to make sure that you've got those opportunities with your kids in the morning and in the afternoon and yada, yada, yada. Listen, by the way, I sound like a hypocrite because I fucking live in Costa Rica, okay? It was through remote work that my business actually scaled, and I was able to move my family to Costa Rica. But I am now spending 10 times more in money traveling back because flights are way more expensive. I'm taking more time to do it because flights and travel today are more difficult. So you got to factor in things like delay. But that's the cost. That's the cost for me, which is my responsibility to still come back in, and I would pay this extra cost, and I will live these extra responsibilities in order to take advantage of being remote.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave with one more idea, because I just want to put a button on this, and then we can probably you can bring us home. What you said strikes a come back to the office and we'll figure it out. That strikes a tremendous amount of fear if I'm with Goldman, because I worked for Payne Weber and Oppenheimer.
Right.
Come back in and we'll figure it out means get your ass in here and you're going to grind. If you don't grind, I'm still going to fire you.
Hmm.
because there isn't any. I guess the problem is that there isn't any cultural trust because everyone just is worked and ground like dogs.
Right.
So when you say get back in, we'll figure it out. I think maybe it's on the company's chops to say we want them in. They're not in. Let's let's create this program that they can rebuy into.
Yeah.
So maybe it is 5 days every other week. It's 4 days. You're still
Hmm.
working, but you get to create the overlap. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
not sure, but I just as you bring things up, because I've on some of these scenarios, I've been on the other side. The financial business is tough.
Right.
It's it's pretty black and white. They don't really never really have cared for humans too well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Chew them
Right.
up, spit them out. So
Right.
yeah, but I
Which
think
is
it
a
makes
problem.
yeah, it is a big problem.
Right.
And that's
Which is
why when you have COVID that comes in and people are like, oh shit, this is that fabric that I think shifted forever because they're like, I can't like I think people like are having like, this inside feeling like I can't do that. Like my life's not worth doing that because
hmm
it was so extreme on one side. Everything there's a pendulum on one side and it swings to the other side.
Yeah, it was. I think your analogy of the pendulum is correct. And what we always say about the pendulum is it swings both ways, right? So we have to acknowledge that if we criticize the one, which is the 9 to 5, this is crazy, and that was too much of a pendulum, and now we've swung all the way to the other side, we have to criticize that side as well to say, wait a minute, this is too loose and it's too sort of abstract and kind of do your thing. We have to kind of come back in the middle, and it can do this, right? It never goes static. It's okay, my hand. There you go. Whoosh, whoosh. Like
Yeah, yeah.
there's always a balance to things, and I just my point in all of this is I think as leaders we've got more of a responsibility to encourage this dialogue and conversation around what does it look like for us as a team to spend time together more often in all sorts of aspects, not just get your ass in the office.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think this was a fun one. Talking
Yeah.
Human with Witz and Weiss for every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern. A lot of different conversations being had. Feel free to reach out directly to Greg if you want to make your company awesome and build culture and make people better humans. Reach out to me if you're bored. I just need someone. I need a friend.
Reach out to Mike if you need any help on LinkedIn and in your business when it comes down to it. You're an excellent dude, bro. You do amazing work, right? All
And
right.
then
Well, on that
yeah,
note, we'll count us out. It's been a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you liked today's episode. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe if there's a subscribe, which I don't think there is.
hit the
But you
bell.
can
Hit
definitely,
the bell.
definitely share this. And onwards and upwards. Stay happy. Stay healthy.